History is indeed a wonderful subject because it teaches us some great lessons and also gives us a lot of inspiration to move ahead in life, right? But often, very often, there are certain mysteries that need to be, revealed in front of people. And science often helps in revealing those mysteries. Today in this discussion, we'll discuss about a chapter from your English textbook, that is Discovering Tut. The saga continues. Very often science also intervenes and gives us a great perspective on history, but ultimately the saga will continue. Many more thoughts will arise, many more, mysteries will be, spoken about and in the future. But at the end of it, the attempt is what matters. And that attempt, one such attempt is being discovered here. And I shouldn't call this an attempt. It was a breakthrough because in 2005, and I'm taking the date of 5th January 2005, the CT scan, that's a computed tomography scan of King Tut. So King Tut was basically a pharaoh in the BCE era. It was like, now the pharaoh is basically a monarch. He was a monarch in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, and these monarchs existed till the time Roman Empire came and captured Egypt. So these pharaohs had a lot of power with them, and so did King Tut, one of the most revered monarchs in Egypt, right? So what was the reason for this for the CT scan to be done? The reason was, twofold. Number one, to find out how old he was at his death. Some people say he was only about 19 or 20 years. And if he was only that old, then secondly, how did he die? Was it because of a natural calamity, or was it because of a physical, something going wrong from within, or was it a war? What was the reason for that? That's another reason why the CT scan was conducted. So when the CT scan began, basically the tomb was 26 feet underground, and Zahi Hawass, he was the person who was carrying it out, the main person, the Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, which looks at objects or artifacts from the past. And then this chapter takes us back a little time. Like in 1922, Howard Carter, an archaeologist, a famous archaeologist, he discovered this Tut's tomb, and he discovered this tomb, and he found out that the contents of his tomb were surprisingly complete, richest royal collections ever found, right? And the eternal brilliance, it basically very gilded. His face was gilded, it was filled with lots of gold, and the eternal brilliance, mark my words, meant to guarantee resurrection. What's the meaning of resurrection? It means rebirth. So we all know that someone who's dead cannot come back to life. But this was a belief in the past that if you would put gold, or you would, like amass all that wealth, and you would attach that with that person, there was a chance that that person will actually come back to life and will, once again serve the people. So that was one reason why perhaps he was cremated with so much of gold, right? So after investigating, all the gold and what all was found on top, he decided to actually move out all those, the coffins, right? The nested coffins. And after removing the first one, he found out that there were, garlands put over there. And it was a shroud adorned with garlands, and these garlands had cornflower, and all various kinds of flowers, which showed that this burial was done in the month of March or April. Now after that, he found the body, which was attached and stuck to the bottom by ritual resins, because they had hardened up. So when you keep anything at a certain place for too long, and ultimately there is it's not kept in isolation, there are other material also, it ultimately sticks to that surface. So imagine so long back it's been done, so of course it's difficult for it to be separated. So now Zahi Hawass decides to put it in the sun, like 149 degree Fahrenheit. He put it in down just beneath the sun, and he decided to expose it to the heat so that it might loosen, but that did not work. And then with scientific detachment, he said, we need to try and chisel off all those layers below, right? So we need to basically sever all those joints. So basically he decided to sever all the joints. He removed the head, removed parts of the body, and everything was kind of separated, so that he was able to find out the mysteries hidden within that mummy. So after he severed all these joints, he brought them back with the help of padding, and basically it copped a lot of criticism because he had not kept it as it was originally. He had made a lot of changes in it. So after that, archaeology has significantly changed over decades. In 1960s, you had an X-ray being performed, and certain revelations were out over there. For instance, you did not have the rib bone being found over there. So he later on, you had, of course, CT scan of 2005. But now let's go back and understand, his lineage. Starting off with Amenhotep III. Now, who is Amenhotep III? He was a part of the 18th dynasty of the pharaohs, and he was an amazing ruler. But his successor was Amenhotep IV. And Amenhotep IV initiated one of the strangest periods in Egyptian history. Why? Because he made a lot of changes. And firstly, he decided to change his own name. He changed his own name from Amenhotep III to Akhenaten. Then he changed the capital from Thebes to Akhetaten. And he ruthlessly killed many people, and he also plundered all the temples out there. So temples of Amarna, the local goddess, and basically he didn't want people to worship Amun, right? So he basically was a ruthless person and authoritarian ruler, and there was a lot of change needed. So his successors, Menkaure, did not do much, and after Menkaure you had Tutankhamun, who took over. And the reason why he is regarded so much, the reason why there is so much of speculation about his death and about so much about we're talking so much about him, the reason for that is that he decided to undo all those changes that have been made by Akhenaten. So he brought about a restoration of the ideas of the past. So he changed his own name from he was initially called as Tutankhaten, because of course he was a descendant of Akhenaten, but he changed this to Tutankhamun, and later on he brought about a restoration of the old ways. And now the reason why we are studying about him is, of course, as I told you, twofold. Number one, to look back at his why he died and what was his age when he died. So after that, we discuss about the CT scan, which is what is the main idea and the main focus area of this chapter. So Tut was one of the first ever mummies to have undergone CT scan, moving regally ahead of his countrymen. Now, what does that statement imply? It implies that, at his time, he was way beyond his contemporaries, extremely ambitious, extremely, jurisprudent. So he was a very, very good ruler at that point of time, better than his contemporaries. And now he was, it was befitting that he was the first ever mummy to have been CT scanned. So the CT scan took place, and a few people, experts in radiology and forensics, they began researching on this. So now, how did the CT scan take place? The night of the CT scan, so workmen carried Tut from his tomb in a box, right? So they carried him, and soon after 2 hours, two men came out and they brought, two white plastic fans. Why? Because the cooler fan, inside the cooler fan, a lot of sand had gotten over there. So now a guard, joked saying that this is the curse of the Pharaoh. Now, what's the curse of the Pharaoh? The curse of the Pharaoh is basically a belief that anyone who meddles with the affairs of the Pharaoh is, something bad is destined to happen with him or her. So it's a belief that people have and had in the past as well, and still there was a belief in Egypt. So now when this happened, they immediately the joke immediately recalled that there's something called the curse of the Pharaoh, and so he said that this might be the curse of the Pharaoh, the fact that that there was sand in the cooler fan. So now after that they went inside, and the CT scan was conducted. And later on, a technician pulled up astonishing images of Tut on a computer screen. So what were those astonishing images? You need to remember these. Firstly, a grey head took shape, right? Secondly, neck vertebrae were seen clearly, right? Then you had a hand being visible, and also several views of the rib cage. So everything was seemingly normal. There was nothing abnormal in those pictures. So there was also a transection of the skull. So everything seemed to be normal, and Zahi Hawass, right, we looked at his name, he was the Secretary General of Antiquities, so he was relieved after that, and he said that now I will be able to have a good night's sleep, right? So by the time that the results had been out, the technician had pulled out those images, Tut had already been placed back in his tomb. Now above that tomb you had the Orion symbol. So what is the Orion? Basically a constellation. It is signifying the soul of Osiris, or the god of the afterlife, right? So that implies that the god of the afterlife was looking and watching over the king, that is King Tut. So the story basically, it does not have any specific moral as such, but it is only that, mysteries cannot be unraveled so quickly. It is something that takes a lot of time, and science does play a role in unraveling mysteries, at least partially, if not in totality. So that's about, this chapter. I hope this explanation was helpful. I apologize for not being regular with my videos, and in fact not putting videos at all for a long period of time, but I will definitely, whenever time permits, do my bit for you guys, right? So do subscribe, do share this video with all your friends so that they will also benefit from this explanation. Namaskar, thank you so much.